Today is actually the first day of the month of Iyar. So yesterday and today is both Rosh Chodesh. It starts the new month. Last month is still the transition in, and today actually is the first day of the month of Iyar. Iyar stands for the beautiful acronym Ani Hashem. The Yod is Hashem. Rofecha is the Resh, which means I am Hashem, your healer. And this month is particularly strong in the realm of healing, both physical healing, emotional healing, all the parts of healing. And what I was understanding a little bit that's very interesting, just some food for thought, is that one of the things, and if you heard me, I know it was very hard to hear me at the challah bake. I think that was the biggest feedback that I got, that it was hard to hear. Thank God, because a bunch of chattering, women, thank God. But if you heard, I did mention that the timing, which was when I planned the challah bake months ago, I didn't even realize the incredible power of this time of year when I wanted to do a unity challah bake, but I didn't realize that it was actually going to be in this time period of the counting of the Omer. So last week we spoke about the power of the Omer. What I want to point out is that there was a specific historical tragedy that happened during this time. The way that we talked about, like everything is always the same energy. So totally different time in history, meaning like years later, but the same month. And that was that the great teacher, Rabbi Akiva, who brought tremendous amounts of Torah wisdom to this world. Rabbi Akiva, he was the one who started learning the alphabet at 40 years old. He started teaching students, and he had tens of thousands of students. And there was a pandemic. There was actually a pandemic, and they started dropping dead. Hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of students. And what we're told is, why did they off camera? What we're told is let me put my face on here. Thank you. Okay. What we're told is why were they dying? Does anybody know what this pandemic was because of? Does anyone remember?
Senseless hatred.
So it says Shalom nahagu kavod zeh bazeh, that they did not treat each other with respect. Now, these were great Torah scholars, great sages. So to understand exactly what that meant, I mean, it's probably very different than we think of somebody not treating somebody with respect, today. But because of this, one of the healing aspects of this month, Ani Hashem Rofecha, is also the power of the healing of the human spirit, of treating, there's two components to this, of treating one another with respect, of looking at somebody else and seeing the goodness within them, as well as seeing the goodness within ourselves. It's very hard to see goodness in someone else when you don't even see the goodness in yourself. Generally, the most critical people in this world are those who are very critical of themselves. They don't see themselves as worth, so it's very easy to point out the critical that they see in other people. So this month, when we're talking about healing and we're talking about the healing powers, it is definitely a month of focusing on the healing and leaning into God's ability to heal. And it's also this time to focus on the healing power that we have within, in terms of seeing other people, trying to make more connections with other people, trying to unite with other people. And like we said last week, each week of the calendar focuses on a different midah, a different aspect of the chart. This week happens to be the midah of Tiferet. Tiferet in English is best translated as harmony. But what's interesting is that if you look at the root word inside of the word Tiferet, it comes from the Hebrew word pe'er, which means the goodness, the glory. So part of being able to have that harmony is being able to see the goodness. What brings that feeling of balance, of truth from within, is really being able to look at a situation or a person from a place of, how do I see this person with pe'er, with goodness, with a shine. So I think that's just, for me, that's just such a powerful thought, because oftentimes we just think about it's true, like God's healing powers this month, and it's definitely something to focus on. The world is in so much pain. We have such a huge sickness, and we need God's healing. And also thinking about the actions that we have to take in order to tap into that. There's that combination of what God puts in, but also what we have to do. So I just thought that was a beautiful, interesting balance. I read somewhere that if you you can make of this whatever you want. This is in the name of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, that if it's the month of Iyar and it starts to rain, you should open up your mouth and try to receive a couple of the drops, because the rain in this month is coming from such a source of like healing, that the potential of medicine and everything, like this is the month. So whatever, just some food for thought, whatever you would like to do with it. I think that's very powerful. So truly, may we truly see the healing this month. May we feel it inside of us. May we see it, just in the world at large, and for any individuals who need their healing. Amen. And Chodesh Tov. Okay, we are going to carry on. We are in this piece of Torah. And we started discussing last week the whole concept of the gift of receiving the Torah. That was what we were up to. And we're going to continue on a little bit more this week. Okay. So I want to start over here where we talk about in a morning prayer that we say. This is where we left off last week. Every day in the morning prayers, there is a certain blessing that we say. If you got my email from the Chalabik follow-up, I introduced our next program that's going to happen, which is going to be called Savoring Sinai. And sure, thank you, Marcy. Good to see you. And it's all about being able to it's being able to just really, literally savor the sweetness of Mount Sinai, of the Torah. There is a blessing that we say every day to ask for this. And the words are, and it's in the morning blessing. We say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we're making a blessing that God, let my actions be able to be ones that are always osek, which means busy, with Torah. Okay? The next words that we say are two of my favorite words in all of the prayers, and they are V'ha'arev na Hashem Elokeinu, which means Hashem, please allow these words of the Torah to be sweet in my mouth. It continues on, the paragraph continues on. Why he's going to start talking about this in a second, but why do you think this is a very important plea? Why do you think we need to pray? Number one, to be busy with the Torah. It's interesting that we say a blessing to be busy with the Torah. And number two, to ask that the Torah is sweet in our mouths. Why is it so important?
Isn't it a mitzvah to study Torah?
Okay, so it is a mitzvah to study Torah, but interestingly enough, the words in this blessing are not to study.
It says busy. What does
It says busy. Exactly. It says la'asok.
Living it?
To be busy. Okay, very good. So we're going to discuss that in a second. Let's first just discuss why we have to discuss why it has to be sweet, and then we'll go back into that.
I think the sweetness is more like positive thinking and the power of positive thinking. So think good, it will be good.
Okay.
Instead of being critical, right?
Okay.
Like, because it's easy to be critical, like you were just saying.
But why do we need to pray that? Meaning, why wouldn't the Torah be sweet?
I think we should do it, everything that we do, maybe with love and not just like rote,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, and maybe that's what, Amy, you're saying a little bit about the positive thinking, okay?
Integrate it in what we're doing so that everything we do becomes better, greater.
We have visitors. Hi, guys, can they even see us? Oh my God, it's probably dark, there's a whole preschool outside the window. Smush noses up against the glass, because we can't see what's going on here. Yeah, hold on, yeah.
To integrate the the learning, the study, and
Right.
take it all in such a good way. Like, wow, I did tzedakah, I did this, I'm learning, so that it becomes so much a part of what we're doing that it's not automatic, like we're not paying attention, but that we're so okay with it all.
Okay, beautiful. So that really goes to the piece of the busyness.
Yeah.
That it becomes a whole over it's like a whole involvement of like an ASEC is business. It literally means like it's a business. Where like your whole Torah learning, it's not like one isolated moment. Like you come to Torah class and then you leave it and like, it's like it's living it. It's becoming a business. So that's why you're busy with it, meaning every aspect of our lives, every single thing. This is the most incredible thing about Torah. There is not one detail of any second or millisecond of the day that Torah does not tell you exactly how to feel, think, act, respond.
Well,
Every single second.
maybe it says to be sweet, to take it as sweet because you don't want to resent
Okay.
taking over your life. You don't ever want to stay, oh, I have to do that, you
So
don't
that it
have-
doesn't feel like it's a burden.
It doesn't. feel like
Okay.
a burden.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, exactly, 100%.
When you were saying all, like it tells you when to feel and to think and all these things, that can become, we talked about last week, rote
Right,
and not
right.
connected to what it really is. So
Okay,
you have to
beautiful.
be mindful
Okay, beautiful.
of
Right.
what you're doing.
When when you want to get a child to take a medicine, right? What do the doctors do? What do?
Something is-
They make it into sweetness. They make it into, this is bubble gum, this is grape, which flavor do you want, right? This way the child can take the medicine. It's doing exactly what it needs to do for the child, but they think, ooh, I get to take my medicine. Like, this is so
And you turn
exciting.
it into a game with the airplane, that everything becomes, there is bitterness and strife in life, but to take it and say, okay, I got through that, this will be better. And just kind of learn to roll with the acceptance and the embrace of all that Torah is.
Right, exactly. But go
And
ahead.
to
Sharon.
follow up in terms of the bitterness, there's a lot in the Torah that's tough to read. It's not all sweet. And while they're
Right.
great lessons, you're learning about people fighting against each other. You're learning about families turning on each other. You learn about the reasons, but yet to still come away with the sweetness of it and the lessons that we learn is important.
Right,
Because
beautiful.
it's not all sweet at all.
Right, and not only the stories, but sometimes even the laws. Sometimes the laws don't feel so sweet either. So what I think is so beautiful about this introduction to this next segment that he's going to talk about is that it reminds us that like this is a prayer. This is something, it's not like it's a given, right? We have to ask for the Torah to be sweet in our mouths. There's a beautiful tradition when a boy turns in it's more of a Hasidish custom, but you probably are familiar with the idea of an upsharon, right? Where people, we actually do not have this custom, but people will grow the hair of a boy until they're 3 years old, and then they'll cut it at 3 years old. And at 3 years old, what a lot of people will do, I see this more in Israel and in New York, to be honest. I don't see it so much here, but what they'll do is they'll put the aleph base, the first letter of the aleph in the base, they will literally cover it and drizzle honey on it, and they'll teach the child, this is an aleph. Now lick the honey off of the aleph. It's very symbolic that Torah learning, the first letter that they're supposed to be learning from the Torah, should always have that sweetness, that it should always be able to feel sweet. Now, many times there are things, whether it's consequences or actions or things that just feel like, why does this have to feel so trapping? Or like, why is there this fence or whatever it is that doesn't feel sweet? And part of the process of growing with Torah and understanding what Torah has to offer us is understanding that even though it doesn't feel sweet, there must be a reason that in some realm it is sweet. And what I'm seeing right now might not feel sweet or look sweet, but this is where the faith piece comes in. I am trusting that God only wants ultimate sweetness for me. And so even though this does not feel sweet, there must be a sweetness in this. So in addition to everything that was just said, which is also true, it's this other layer of understanding that God in the Torah and all that's going to come along with it also comes an acceptance of you. and the actions and the way that you interact with humanity. And there are going to be times that that is not going to feel sweet. V'ha'arev na, also make that sweet. Make me have the ability. Could you imagine? I was just listening to this whole podcast about this month, and he was saying, could you imagine if we walked around with a constant level of full acceptance? Think about what society would look like if everything that always happened to us, it was always with this like realization of like, well, okay, God, I guess this must be best for me. So here I go, time to pivot. Boop, like done, not even like done. Well, could you imagine how different society would look? We live in a society that we fight everything, right? We just push, we fight. And like we discussed, the idea of control, that it's all an illusion. So this is part of this blessing as well, the acceptance piece as well. So the morning blessing says the following: for the sake of our fathers who trusted in you and to whom you gave the laws of life, be gracious to us and teach us likewise. Our Father, merciful Father, have mercy on us and put in our hearts the ability to understand, to learn, and to teach all the words of your Torah. This is an additional blessing, also specifically around the Torah. He says that the author of the Tanya points out that in this prayer, the merits of the fathers are mentioned only in connection with the actual learning of the Torah. Receiving the Torah into our hearts is a matter for ourselves alone. But how can we ask God to put the Torah into our hearts? Surely the fear of God in the hearts is the one thing that we can attain only by our own efforts. But there need be only an opening the size of a needle's point, this is what we discussed last week, on our part, and the very act of praying to God and beseeching Him to help us acquire Torah is that opening. We are the ones that make that difference. We are the ones that take ownership of this. When we stand before God and we beseech Him like a child before his father, we are opening our hearts. And even if the opening is minute, the heavenly aid is immense. That's why part of the morning blessing has to start off with this mindfulness, with this intent, right? Everything, Jamie just said to me something so beautiful yesterday. She said, since we started learning in a certain get together about prayer, and we were discussing the power of just starting off your morning with the Moda'ani. And she said to me, and that was like several months ago, and she said, I really have not missed a Moda'ani. I really have not missed a day with saying the Moda'ani. And she was telling me that what a beautiful difference she feels that it's made. The smallest thing of setting an intention for the day can make such a big difference. Mm-hmm. It's so crazy that we think that when we get into an Uber, we would look at the Uber driver as a meshugna if he wouldn't ask us for our destination. If we would just get into an Uber and the Uber driver would just not ask us where we're going, he would just start to drive. He would say to us, where we would say to him, like, hello, I'm in your car. Where do you think you're going? Oh, I don't know. Just going. We're just going for a ride. But for some reason, when we live life, we wake up and we forget to set an intention for the day. Where do we think we're going? Where do we think we're heading? If we make a decision from the moment we wake up about gratitude, about asking God to let the Torah be sweet, then our day has already set an intention. We've already decided certain things. So that's just a very, very important reminder. Okay, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. First, any comments or questions on this piece? Okay, so I want to I'm gonna be, if none of you are following along, but if you were following along, you'll see that I'm leaving out certain paragraphs here, okay? Recognizing the source. It's the same with all of the gifts that we receive from heaven. When we turn to God and recognize in Him the source of the gift, we gain the merit needed to be granted the gift. I heard in the name of Yerucham Levovitz, he was a very big head of the yeshiva of the Mir, that the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea was not so much the fact that it was split. Miracles as great as this are being done around us all of the time, and we don't notice them. The miracle of the splitting of the sea was that the people of Israel appreciated the great gift that was granted for them. Similarly, it is not the fact that the Torah is being given to us that is the great thing. The novelty and the miracle is that we realize that the Torah is being given to us. I feel like this needs to be like a flashcard, you know? I think that that is just such an important realization of, in general, just an attitude of life in general, but specifically the way he applies it to the giving of the Torah. Because and it makes me sad because we, like we said last week, we have this Torah that's a gift. And how many of us, A, don't think it's a gift? We think it's a burden. We don't realize we have it. And if we realize that we have it, like the relationship that we have to it feels very like estranged. So over here, the way that he draws that comparison with the splitting of the sea, I think is just a remarkable thing. And I remember I have to say this specific example that's popping into my head because I remember feeling this. Unfortunately, this story took place in Israel, it makes it even more sad. When I gave birth to my Shira, it was in Israel, and they don't have OBG, like I had my own OBGYN, but you don't have an OBGYN who's necessarily delivering your child. Like you walk in, it's a midwife and like whatever. So the midwife who helped me deliver my child, and I have to say it was the hospital that it was at was Hadassah in Kerem. So there's a very big like discrepancy in the type of midwives that there are, just in terms of their belief systems in general. So I just was so blown away. Like the birth of a child to me is like the splitting of the sea. I mean, like miracle beyond miracles. This is my second baby. It happens to be, it was my quickest labor. And it was like, chick, chack, chick, chack. So I was crying afterwards, just out of total gratitude and grateful, just total humility and gratitude. And I just kept saying in Hebrew, what a miracle, what a miracle, what a miracle. I couldn't make this up. She said to me, stop, why are you talking so much about the miracle? These things are happening all the time, every day. This is what the Israeli midwife said to me. I'm like, I had to have my baby here for you to tell me this? Like, that's not why I'm here. And it left such an impression in my mind. I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, here you have a perfect example of somebody who sees the same thing every single day, day after day after day, that for her, it has completely lost sight. Now, I hope that we can all also chime in that we know incredible OBGYNs who never take a day of a birth, for granted and are constantly saying thank you for the Almighty. But I saw it firsthand. It had become so normal for her. It had become so rote for her that she said, why is this even a miracle? This is what happens all the time. This is just nature. So
What'd you say to her?
that's what I said to her. You know what? I had just had a kid and I was so disturbed. I was so upset. And I had no family with me. I just had my husband with me. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore the comment and move right on. But I remember what she looked like. I remember exactly I remember it so crystal clear because I remember thinking,
It was so defining.
that was such a defining moment. And in Israel, I'm like, this could not have just happened, So everyone, we all have. So the question I want to ask over here, and you don't have to answer, but it is important and it is food for thought, is there something in my life, exactly like he's saying, is there something in my life, perhaps connected to the gift of Torah, that I have perhaps forgotten, that I just take for granted because, and we've discussed this before. We've discussed, that nothing, everything is a miracle. We've gone through that. But over here, he's bringing in this extra layer that the gift of Torah is as much of a gift as it was for the splitting of the sea. And the reason that the splitting of the sea was such a miracle that we still talk about today is not because of the splitting of the sea. It's because of the gratitude that went on after the sea was split. It's because of the recognition and the realization they needed it so badly that at that moment, if the sea would not have split, they would have been completely crushed by their enemies. And the splitting of the sea was like, so that's an unbelievable statement. That's what made the miracle so great, was the appreciation. That puts a lot of responsibility on us when you think about what that's like in terms of the Torah. Remember, we're doing this chapter before Shavuos so that we feel a little bit closer to the concept of receiving the Torah. That means that the miracle, the gift of God giving us the Torah, do you realize how much of that lies upon humanity? That it's up to us to be the receivers and the ones that are grateful and the ones that don't take it for granted, to be able to make the gift of Torah as great as it could be. I just think that's totally an unbelievable point. Yes, somebody who was here.
So I'm another one who more recently has started saying Moda Ani when I
Oh,
wake up.
beautiful.
And it's not Torah, it's a prayer, but I believe
That's Torah.
I think it does set the tone, like to be great. I don't know. I think it's the whole idea of going to sleep at night, whatever happens to your soul or whatever, and then it's returned to you when you wake up in the morning and you have another, like, I just think the Moda Ani sets the tone, exactly like you said, for the day, for everything that comes after that in the day. Like you've been given another day of life, and this whole idea that your body functions the way that it does, that it can go to sleep at night and you wake up and are functioning again the next day. I do think it does set the tone incredibly.
Beautiful. Beautifully
For-
said, Valerie. Beautiful. Yeah.
You know, everything that so much comes from Judaism. Mark was telling me that he's in one of his business groups and somebody posted a morning affirmation that you can say every morning.
Yeah.
Intention.
Beautiful.
We do that in yoga.
Yeah,
We start, you set an intention. Sure. And
absolutely.
it's so like it's grounding.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's just such an important piece. And I don't know, for me, I think about that. I just think about that a lot. So now, in addition, so when I learned this, I thought like that's a new level, not a new level, but a new layer for me to think about when we say these morning blessings. He was referring to two different ones. When we talk about the Torah, just being able to like pause for a moment and just think about like my actual role in receiving. So I just think that that's a very beautiful piece. Okay, so now we're going to continue on. The first line over here, he says, is receiving the Torah is not an easy thing. You can all breathe a sigh of relief now in case you were like, why is she making this sound so easy? Receiving the Torah is not an easy thing. Rabbi Simcha Zissel Sif wrote that a person understands a word of Torah only if he feels the same about it as he would about an original thought of his own. That sounds very lofty. That sounds very hard. Understanding comes about as a result of a deep thought, and this in turn is a function of the strength of one's desire to know. So we find the Torah of God is his delight. And then these are quotes from different places. And in his Torah, his own Torah, he will meditate day and night, and only then will he understand it. In every sphere of learning, intensity of study has to compete with natural laziness. All the more in Musar, which is by its very nature has to compete with all of one's character traits. The intensity of study demanded is enormous and one's resistance is equally strong. I'm going to make this super practical in just a second. The intensity of one's desire must be strong enough to counteract all of this. The ability of base desires to overwhelm intellectual knowledge is only too apparent from the rabbi's well-known statement that the Jewish people served idols only to permit them to indulge in immorality in public. After their great achievement in accepting the Torah, their base desires were able to assert themselves to such an extent that they could descend to a level with which the Torah would call them idolaters. Something is going on over there, surprise party or something. There's like some party going on next door. So what are we to say with our puny achievements? And we have not even accepted the Torah yet. Okay. So what I think is just very important to pause over here and recognize is that Torah has so many different aspects. And what he's talking about over here is that the way that God designed us is that there's always going to be this counteraction, right? There's always going to be something to counteract. As soon as you're going to accept the Torah, there's going to be like this little hissing snake that's going to appear and try to pull you down, 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 whether it be like in the same realm of something that you just learned, or trying to pull you away, or trying to like get you off track. And that is where the what's the antidote to this? When we feel like, well, I just learned something, I'm in this great space, and now come in and I feel like the Jewish people, they accept the Torah. What do we see all the time when we were doing the tour of Torah? We see from the highest heights to the lowest low. They get the, like Donna's like, they did it again. I will never forget that line. She's like, did it? Can't they just learn? Like, how does this keep happening? Right from the highest to the lowest. This is the swing. So, and this will happen to us in our lives as well. So what is the antidote? We might, what the antidote is, delve in more to Torah, understand more boundaries, understand more how to counteract the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Because only then, when you continue to do so, is it going to start to be able to feel like you're making progress. Because otherwise, you're going to take something on, you're going to learn something, something great, and then the hissing snake comes right back in. And this is going to be the constant cycle. And what he's explaining over here is that Torah study, understanding, living, it is hard work. It is not something, it's called to toil. Amelos baTorah, it means it has to be toiling. And it's not just intellectual toiling. Toiling also means this grapple, this struggle where you're starting to feel like a tug of war. Something is going on. Body, soul, usually it's like a body, soul, you know? And like I always say, your biggest clue is if it feels comfortable, it's probably your body speaking. If it's not feeling as comfortable, it's probably your soul speaking, right? The things that feel very comfortable, your body loves comfort. Our bodies crave comfort. That's all we want. Creatures of habit, creatures of comfort. That's what our body wants, not necessarily what our soul desires. Okay, so just something to think about.
You know,
I'm going to quote to you one thing. Yeah.
that's the whole beauty of Judaism, that one size fits all. That you can keep studying and always find something in there, and there's no one answer.
Right.
I mean, you can, you know, my son-in-law who just converted is just blown away by how you can discuss these things and you
Wow.
can make it fit into your own life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so special. It's especially special, like we said last week, to hear it from a convert. You know, it's very, very special. It's like a new perspective. So the line actually is, because you might be thinking, if you're sitting here thinking about what I'm saying, you might want to say like, well, what's the relationship? Like, what's the relationship between the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and the Torah? Like, how do the two work together? So what our sages actually teach us is Barati Yetzer Hara before even the actual Torah. If you think about this, I mean, the Torah really is the blueprint to the whole world in general. So this is a little bit of like but in theory, Barati Yetzer Hara, I created an evil inclination, and then Barati Torah Tavlin. And then I created a Torah to be the antidote to the Yetzer Hara, which means that evil inclination was already put into each one of us. We are wired to be brought down, but the antidote to it is Torah. Barati Yetzer Hara, I created this evil, Barati Torah Tavlin. So therefore, I created this Torah to be able to fight back. It says some kind of word that I don't even know what to say over here. But so we find that the only way to receive the gift of Torah is to really learn Torah. One who studies intensively learns more, and one who invests great effort receives still more. A person who neither invests great effort, nor studies intensely, nor learns Musar, nor Torah, has never received the Torah at all. Happy is he who does. Right? So this is how this particular essay ends. We're going to continue on. It goes right into the next one. But oftentimes I think it's very interesting. Like, you know, people will have opinions or form opinions about something that they've really never studied. Like, who am I to have an opinion on brain research or on like stem cell stuff when like I have no idea. I can't tell you about that enough. I haven't studied it big enough, right? I can't speak about that. And it's just very interesting because a lot of times you'll hear people kind of coming with very strong opinions when have you really tried to study? Have you dug in? Have you really tried to understand what this is? Have you learned into the different explanations? Does not one of them resonate with you? It's just some food for thought. And the last line, happy is he who does, I think is just very important, that it goes back to the first chapter that we learned with him, that is that real happiness, it's not really possible to have happiness without Torah. If there's no Torah, there can't be a level of true happiness. There could be maybe fill it in with another word, but if there's no Torah inside, it's very empty. It's like a vessel that has the externals, but it's missing something inside. Okay. I'm gonna pull upon some other things over here, and I think these are very interesting. I think we're gonna skip this section. If I want to go back to it, we'll see. Okay, we're gonna discuss now Torah and the world to come, because I think this is an important concept. You okay?
Yes.
Okay. Torah and the world to come. Rabbi Elazar said, those who are unversed in Torah cannot live in the world to come. Only he who makes use of the light of Torah in this world can be revived by the light of Torah in the world to come. What do you think this sentence is saying? On a very simple level. We haven't really fully understood what the world to come is, but we understand. After we die, our souls are going to enter into another real life. Okay? What he's saying over here is that if you haven't really gained Torah, it's going to be hard to gain a spot in the world to come. What do you make of that?
How much Torah? In other words, you live your life like, as my level of learning Torah, it's obviously not the same level as you're learning Torah.
Mine is very low, and I'm very serious.
Mine is really tiny,
Yeah.
tiny. But
Right.
do I still
you're
get to go to the
Yeah.
world to come?
So what do you think? Meaning if he's saying this,
I think.
first of all, we said last week that it says, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba. Any Jewish person has a certain portion in the world to come.
Right.
Okay. Now we're adding this. Now we're going to understand a little bit more about what does it mean. So what do you mean? What does it mean?
Well, it probably means that my soul might not be raised to the same level as yours.
Well, maybe it will be raised higher.
I'm sorry?
Maybe it will be raised
Oh,
higher.
It's that idea, we don't know what we do, like what small act with big,
Right.
you don't, what's the credit for each thing that we do?
Yeah,
You
I'm
don't-
running a workshop for teenage girls in a few weeks. I called the workshop Courage Over Comparison. And I kept coming up with this line. I kept thinking about this line. Look forward and don't look sideways. Just keep looking forward and don't look sideways. So I think that very much applies to this. And I think that when we're gonna delve into exactly what he meant over here. But I first wanted to just discuss it because it has nothing to do with anyone else. Only person your reward will have to do with is only Lynn. That's it.
Right.
Nobody else will be part of that
I'm a
equation.
different person
Right.
than you are.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And
And the rubrics is going to be a completely different judgment system. So that's just that looking forward, not looking to the side. That's just number one. Yeah.
I agree with you, no comparison is each one of us was put on this earth as a unique individual. So it's to best of our own ability to do what we can and will
Correct.
in the direction.
Correct. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah.
I'm thinking back to your, 3 minute ago statement about your son-in-law. You have given him a gift of being in your home and doing Shabbos and lighting candles, doing whatever you're doing that has made him welcome in your family. And you're giving him the exposure, and for him to be able to say, wow, I can learn and I can study and grow more. You're giving him entree into the world to come by what you're doing.
Right.
And
It's
which is
individual.
different than what I'm doing or she's
Right.
doing or,
Right.
There's no
so
comparison.
keep it up.
Okay. Good. So we established that there's no such thing as comparison. What else?
Thinking about, I think I read it in Lori's book about, when we die, we're like sitting next to God in the theater,
Mhm.
and we get to watch the movie of our lives, and why we're in, like hell or whatever it's called, Gehenna, is because we can't make any more decisions. We're just watching what already happened and we can't change anything.
Okay. It's a very startling analogy and very true. But what are you bringing in here to show?
I'm just saying, we all have choices to make in our lives, and then when we're in the world to come, we'll see how that plays out.
Okay, good. But what does that have to do with like the actual statement of those who are unversed in Torah cannot live in the world to come? Only he who makes use of the light of Torah can be revived by the light of Torah. No, you said it. Just say it. You are alluding to it, but just say what you're saying. What does that mean in terms of this world?
We just need to be conscious of what we're doing and living according to what we know is good, which comes from Torah.
Okay, exactly. So meaning, because you were focusing on the after piece, you were focusing on like, and once we're in the world to come, we're frozen because we can no longer make any decisions, and that is going to be the feeling of hell, right? Like that. But what we might not realize, and this is, it's, you know, for somebody who's anxious, this could drive a person mad. But like the question we have to constantly be asking ourselves is, am I doing what I'm capable of doing? Or is there something more that I should be striving towards?
Be
Right?
accountable.
Yes,
We need to be
exactly,
accountable.
exactly, exactly. The light of Torah. This means that the light of Torah is identical with the life of the world to come. This is beautiful, ladies. Understand what this is. Only one who is able to use the light of Torah, which therefore regulates his actions, because we know that that's what Torah does, only such a one can live in the world to come. The performance of mitzvot without benefit of Torah, that is, mitzvot done with spiritual incentive but merely out of habit and training, are not the kinds of fabric of which life in the world to come is woven. There's a lot of depth in which what was just said. I'm going to summarize it for you. Number one is that the light, the feel, like oftentimes we think like, what is the world to come? Like, what is that going to feel like? It's going to be a light, a life of light, with the same way that we can achieve a certain feeling of like a spiritual high or something that feels like, wow, like that was my moment that felt so soul fulfilling. That's like our taste of what that light is. That's going to be the light of what's going to be provided in the world to come. It's going to be the light of Torah. Now imagine the parable would be, imagine that every time that you achieve something, every time that you feel that light of Torah, like that fulfilling feeling of you learn something new or you indulge in something new, or you try to learn something new and don't really quite understand what it's saying, but you try, you're coming close to the light of Torah. Imagine that it's all being poured into a little bucket, okay? You're collecting all of these lights. And suddenly, after 120 years, you show up, our souls will be carrying this little bucket, right? And your bucket will then spill out. The light that your Torah collected, and where Torah is it's a very all-inclusive thing, right? All the things that fall into that, the struggles that we have, the things that we've learned, the mitzvot that we've done, the way that we've overcome challenges, all the things. Every time that Torah, that light is going to spill out, and the bucket that we've collected becomes our world to come. You understand the analogy? What a powerful analogy to think of it, that when we're doing these actions in this world, we're actually laying out what our world to come is going to actually look like. So what he's reminding us over here is that the importance of gaining all of we're saying the word Torah, but Torah, it's very broad over here, but that the Torah is going to become our world in the life to come. It's going to become that. And then the other piece that he mentions is that the only light that really shines, think about like as if like there's like layers of light. Some of them are very dim and some of them are very bright. The brighter that the light is, the brighter that the light shines, the further it's going to get you in terms of like your theater analogy, the further it's going to get you in the world to come. An action or a mitzvah or any Torah that is completely done by habit with zero heart and zero mind is like a very dim light. It's there. It ends up in your bucket because it was an action, but it's like a very dim light. It's not going to like a higher seat, right? So he's talking over here about the idea of intentionality and heart within those actions. I have found wonderful support for this. Okay, so he's going to read, I'm going to read this support that he gives. He says, we have a Mishnah which states that a man who is totally ignorant in Torah cannot become a chassid, which means somebody who's just suddenly like goes above and beyond the law. by the way, chassid over here in this context, not to be confused with a chassid. It's the same word. It's very confusing because it's the same word. But over here in this context, a chassid is known as like a pious person who goes above and beyond, as opposed to like somebody that you just see with like the garb and you think of like that as a chassid. Don't get confused with the garb of a chassid versus what a chassid is supposed to be representing, which is like a pious person who goes above and beyond.
But I'm sure that's the reason they call themselves.
Maybe that's where it came from originally. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, I just feel like we have to like separate the two. But it's just, yeah, just something to think about. A man ignorant. So Rabbeinu Yonah, who comments on this Mishnah, says the following: a man ignorant in Torah may maintain good human relationships and be of excellent character. He may know how to guard himself and may in fact guard himself against sin. He may be righteous and carry out the mitzvot properly, but he will never be able to rise to the level of chassidut, this idea of this high pious level, for this can be attained only by one who is great in Torah. It requires purity of heart and clarity of soul. Now, he's going to say that this is a very puzzling statement. Why is this a very puzzling statement? Does this, when I read this, were you not bothered by it? I could hardly even read it.
Read it again.
I'm not going to read it again, but it's basically just saying that one could live their life, a very seemingly wonderful life, but not Torah. And the word that he uses is he will never be able to reach the heights of a truly pious person because he's missing that core base of purity of heart and clarity of soul through Torah. Is that not disturbing?
Yeah.
Why is that not?
Fair.
Because none of us is gonna get there.
Exactly. It feels very discouraging. It feels very, very discouraging. And by the way, I could tell you other stories that can counteract, where you have stories of people at the very, very, very last minute of their lives, stories in the Gemara, stories in the Mishnah, who lived very less than mediocre lives. We're talking like bad lives. And at the very, very, very end of their life, were able to do what we call tshuva gemura, the highest level of tshuva. And we're told that their souls went to very high places. So this seems like a very puzzling statement. Yes.
Isn't it perhaps a challenge? Sometimes we rise to the occasion because like we have challenges and maybe it's sort of telling us to do more, do more, do more. You're never gonna get there, but do more, do more.
Oh, just like the awareness, like the mental mindset of like, no, you're not there yet. Keep going,
Right.
keep going. Okay,
Right.
I hear that. But he actually himself says this is a puzzling statement, and we're going to read this and ends with this. Rav Dessler himself says this seems very puzzling. Can it mean that a very righteous person who carries out all of the mitzvot may nevertheless not reach the world to come? Like, what are we missing over here? But perhaps we should not be so surprised. After all, Rambam wrote in his commentary to the Mishnah that only a mitzvah done without any admixture of worldly motives of any kind, we learned this, only for the sake of the mitzvah itself, brings a person into the world to come. And he's going to bring other comments over here. But the bottom line is that there's some kind of happy medium over here. Yes, we have to recognize that there are certain spots for the very truly pious that I want to say like a handful of people, maybe a large handful of people, but not every average Jew falls into that category. It's a high level. But for the average Jew, what is this trying to tell us? He's going to remind us that it all comes from a place of effort. Everything in life is going to boil down to how much effort am I putting in? So what he's going to say, I'm just going to explain this. What he's going to say, this is a weird phone call. Sorry. No, it's somebody that I know. But if he's going to say that the pious person can reach only that height, it's because the pious person has put in tremendous efforts in constantly trying to climb higher. Whereas a person who he's describing seems very pious, seems like he's kind of like doing the mitzvot, doing good things, but it comes at a certain level of ease. That's where the discrepancy lies. And now to tie this whole thing beautifully together, and this goes back to your point. I don't know so sure. It's a silly example, but like, who's to say that I would get higher than you in the world to come if it took you more effort to get into the spot that you're in than it took me to get to the spot that I am? And that's why when he talks about the level of certain high pious people, he's not talking about pious people that were just born pious. He's talking about the level of the constant amelos, the constant toil, the constant struggle, the sweat that it takes to be able to get there. And that's why the person whose lifestyle he kind of describes is like, he's a good person. He does Torah, he does mitzvot, but he's never going to be able to achieve that unless by the sweat of his lifestyle, by the choices that he makes and constantly saying, I'm going to try a little harder. I'm going to push myself a little harder, right? Like that feeling of when we don't want to get out of bed in the morning, oh, like the alarm goes off and you're like, there is no part of me that feels capable of getting up right now. And what do? We still get up, right? We somehow still push. You guys are all like, what? Like, I jump out of bed in the morning. Well, not me, okay? It's not so easy. It's very, very hard. And that muscle that we're teaching ourselves, I can do it, is the same muscle that also needs to be worked with spiritual pursuit, with Torah pursuit. Okay, so that's where he's going to end over here. He's going to introduce us to a term called devekut. Devek in Hebrew means glue. I'm ending with this idea for real. Devek in Hebrew means glue. Devekut means clinging. Okay, glue. How do we know that something really sticks? When it's glued together. The idea of what we're trying to achieve with the Torah study is such a feeling that it's like it's glued. It's a highest level of dveikut. It's such a connection that it feels like it's glued onto me. And it's not easy to achieve dveikut. Dveikut takes a tremendous amount of mental energy. It's a constant understanding of everything that I'm doing is in conjunction with the Almighty. It's like a clinging. It's like this real glue that's around me. And that level is a very high level, which we'll start next week. We'll start with the concept of how do we achieve dveikut and what are the steps that we can take to get towards dveikut, and why is dveikut even what we're striving towards. Okay. Any questions over here?
I just have one comment.
Yes.
You know what's so funny after talking about all this? And I may just be imagining this, but well, it happened, I think, with my father, but I think when people don't have any spirituality, their lives, and then when they know that death is imminent, all of a sudden they want to, apologize for this or have a rabbi come or be buried in a Jewish cemetery if they're Jewish, which is fine. But it's like, if I don't do this, then it's going to be really bad for me in the next life. Even though I'm on my deathbed, who do they want next to their side?
A rabbi, right.
Rabbi. I mean, it's to make up for all the 85 years that they had no spirituality. I don't know. I see a lot of people, I feel like a lot, not even only in our religion, but tend to apologize and look back when they are on their quote deathbeds. And
yeah, I mean, listen, it's the time when they're most, feeling like looking back on all the achievements. But what you're saying is 100% true. I'm sure everybody will nod in agreement. What I want to say is I see it even one step more, because I've experienced many, many, many people dying very suddenly. No, I shouldn't say many, many, many. I've experienced a handful of people dying very suddenly or before their time. And the ones who I knew well, I noticed a very strong pattern, how subconsciously before they were going to die, if I look at when they died, there was like a soul tug. They started doing more. There was a certain pull. They would either reach out to pray or they would show up in shul more. It's almost as if the soul knows that it's just about to leave this world. And like Gail said, like it knows that, hold on one second, I'm no longer going to be able to make choices for myself. So subconsciously, it's like planting itself in. This is a pattern that I've seen, which is totally unbelievable. Yeah.
You should imagine, I was listening to one of the widowed wives.
Yeah.
And I never heard this before. She said 40 days before the soul knows, so that her husband, even though he didn't know it.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's probably a Kabbalistic idea. That makes sense.
And I know I saw this in a young man who was in a class with my son years ago. And in his last year, he moved back home, went to California, took care, like he did all.
Like
these
it
things,
knows, right. There's for sure something to that. No, I don't know what that is, but that's a subconscious level. That's something that it wouldn't be able to be described. Like if you would ask him consciously if he recognizes that, he right.
No.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, so Amy, I do definitely agree with that. So the goal of this class, number one, for today's takeaways, is setting the intention. Just a reminder to set the intention for our day. Reminding ourselves that we want to ask for the Torah to be sweet. That we want this, whatever lifestyle, whatever it looks like, that Torah should always feel sweet to us. And number three, that we just really remember that our choices really matter. And only we, there is nobody else that will be able to tell us, but only we can look at our lives and know, this is a move I want to make. This is something more I can do. This is something I want to study. That's incumbent on each one of us. So, all right, ladies, have a wonderful,
so much.
blessed, beautiful blue sky day over here. Enjoy the weather. Good to
Thank
see you all.
Thank you.
Take care. Did you hear
Thank
good
you.
news? Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Devorah.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.